Okay, this is the first tutorial on the From Chlorophyll to the Cosmos. This will help you get through the assignment as I explain this like I would in class. So we're looking at the non-living and the living environment and their interactions. All my slideshows begin with this what should I learn or an I can list. These are the main bullets that are testable. And if a slide is mandatory, it bears a star. And if the slide changes to blue, then it's completely optional, your interest only to continue on. So the first part is we're studying ecology now. And what is it? Ecology is the study of our home. Eco comes from this Greek word oikos, which means home. So ecology is the study of our home. We see ologies all over the place. They basically mean the book of. So ecology is the study or the book of the interactions of the living and non-living environment of our home. Now we divide the universe or the world as we see it into two large parts, living and non-living. And one of the things I really like is what's called etymology, where words come from. We have a biotic part of the environment, like this tree, and the abiotic part, like this rock. In English, if you put a prefix of a, an, ant, or anti on a word, it means the opposite of what the word itself meant. So anti-venom, if you got bit by a snake, antacid, if you want to counteract acid. Even anaphylactic shock means you are no longer protected, not defended. Your own immune system is now turned on you. Not every single word in English language with an A in front of it means the opposite. So an apple is its own word. There's no such thing as a pole that an apple is the opposite of. But it's a pretty good indicator when you see an a, an, ant, anti put in front of a word that it's the opposite of the prior word. Now, in the non-living environment, we break it down into 3 spheres in the textbook. 4, typically, but 3 of them are not living. So if we look on this diagram here, the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere are not alive. The biosphere, root word bio, it's alive. These are the rocks, the air, and the water of the earth. But they forget something. They forget the sunlight, which I add into this list. Okay, so I add to it what's called the heliosphere, which is the sun sort of peeking through in the background here. This is the non-living part of the environment. And it's really quite convenient because the 4 classical Greek elements were air, earth, fire, and water, which was used on a Pink Floyd album cover. So really what we're composed of is mud, bubbly mud, and some fire thrown in, a little bit of starlight. It's kind of cool. The biotic environment discusses where the living things are. The thing is, where does the biotic environment begin or end? There's no clear fixed definition of it. So it's sort of a dotted line around the earth that say, in this ball of rock, air, and water, there are living things. So it doesn't really have a specific location. So the biotic environment, it gets divided into a crazy number of subdivisions. Okay? Now, since all environments on Earth essentially start with plants, it makes sense that the first breakdown inside the biotic environment would be not breaking it down into smaller spheres like lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, but we break it down in what are called biomes. I like to think of the word as meaning biological home. You look at the plant environment and the geological environment, and you expect certain animals to be there. So you might expect to see an elk in this forest. A polar bear would not look out of place in this one. But here you should see a lion, not a tiger, or maybe a buffalo. Because this field of grass, is it grass in Africa? Is it grass in Russia? Is it grass in Alberta? But you certainly would never see a tiger here, despite Tarzan movies quite frequently having tigers out in this kind of environment. So we say prairie, not buffalo land. We would call this a forest, not moose-topia. We describe the landscape and the plants first, and our expectation that certain animals would appear in that area. So the plants start off every environment. Okay? Now, what's the difference between the biotic and abiotic environment? Like, how do they interact? It's recycling. Matter goes between the two states. So carbon, which is pencil lead, charcoal, it's definitely not alive, but when you eat sugar, there's carbon in it. If you want proof, burn some sugar on the stove. It turns black. Once it's in your body, we would call it living carbon, biotic carbon. Calcium, which is a mineral in rocks, like a piece of chalk, is abiotic. But if you eat a piece of chalk, your body will dissolve it, make it into bones, and now it's biotic calcium. So things go between the living and non-living environment all the time. So in a really weird way, I think that we're sun, dirt, water, and air that for a brief moment gets to know about its own existence. And I think that's pretty awesome. Now here's the problem in the textbook that confuses a lot of them. Oxygen and carbon dioxide are definitely not alive, but the text will frequently say biotic carbon dioxide or biotic oxygen. And it refers to these two gases when they are created by life. But the gases themselves are not alive. Okay? So watch for that in the textbook. Next, we'll move on to the lithosphere.